So that they really work on your psyche in a deep way to try and kind of reframe everything. And another way that they actually do that is through something called Sozo, which they also implement at the International House of Prayer. They implement at Bethel in Redding, California, and many, many other places. That's essentially modern day mind control and actually
Well,
has links with MK Ultra, which is something I didn't even know until a few years ago. And
and it's
Sozo was, what was that?
no, I was gonna ask what is like so what is Sozo? Because now I'm like, what? This is
Yeah.
wild.
So the way that they market Sozo is like as a form of therapy. And it's one of those things that has a very vague definition. When
Okay.
you look into it, every single one of these places defines it in a very different way. It's really vague. But when you are actually experiencing it, they market it as this therapy technique where if you have traumatic memories or something like that, someone will lead you through the traumatic memories. They will call in Jesus into those memories, and Jesus will rewrite your memories
Whoa.
yes, so that you don't have that trauma anymore,
Right.
because that's how it works. And
Wow.
essentially what it is because I've gone through Sozo. I actually went through Sozo at my location and at the International House of Prayer.
Okay.
And it's essentially someone leading you into this state of hypnosis. It's a very, very deep trance state.
Hmm.
And in this very vulnerable state that you're in, they will manipulate your memories, not only just with whatever specific thing that it is that you went into it with, but whatever it is that they want you to think or feel or believe. It actually gives me chills to think about, but one of the times that I went through Sozo was with my handler, and one of the things that she had said to me was that I'm not special.
Dang.
So having that be slipped in
Yeah.
is just so traumatic, genuinely. Along with like some other things that are more vulgar that were said. Um, and of course, there's so much gaslighting around it. If people try and come out and say, this happened to me and it wasn't what they said that it was, and I have memory loss now, or I'm experiencing dissociation, I'm
Yeah.
experiencing, splits in my personality, or I'm experiencing at any of these things like depression, anxiety, any of these things, they will completely gaslight you and make you believe that you are just crazy, and you are experiencing spiritual warfare because, it's clearly a demon or
Right.
Satan that is trying to make you believe these things. And so I firmly believe, because when I left the cult a few years after leaving, I was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, which I had never heard of leading
Yeah.
up to that. So that was very, very shocking for me. But I firmly believe that going through things like Sozo is what really kind of triggered that.
Yeah.
And it took a lot for me to kind of get into a place where I was able to not identify with that anymore, where I was able to reintegrate my personality and yeah, stop dissociating in that way. Because what they want when you're in a cult, they want people who are compliant, who are obedient, and who are dissociated from themselves. Because if you
Right.
are connected to yourself, you would never let these things happen.
Hmm.
And that's the thing that is the hardest for people leaving cults. I feel like, I mean, I left in it was like the very end of 2014 slash the very beginning of 2015 was kind of my transition. And I would say that it wasn't until maybe like 3 years ago that I felt even remotely whole. And I
Wow.
was working on myself that entire time, but it really just took so much time to kind of process what I had experienced
Right.
and integrate the memories, integrate the experiences, integrate the trauma, and also figure out, who am I after this experience? What is spirituality to me after this experience? Who is God to me after this experience? Do I even believe in any of this? What do I believe in? It was a very intense time for me that felt like it just went on and on and on for years. And that's the case for many cult survivors.
Yeah. So then, well, two things. One, to focus on Sozo a little bit more.
Yeah.
These individuals? I mean, you mentioned like they're rewriting the past with Jesus healing or whatever, but what they're really doing is this person is giving you their perspective on how to condition you to accept whatever they're trying to sell. Is that, I mean, that's really what's happening there, right? It's like a
Yes.
reconditioning, and that's kind of why, like, the links to MK Ultra. It's like that's basically the same thing where it's taking a person, it's breaking them down, and then it's reformulating them in a way that fits whatever model you're trying to create. And
Yes.
that's I mean, how is that the love of Jesus? How is that? It just makes zero sense how, like, but I've seen shift managers at fast food restaurants get, cocky and arrogant, making $1 an hour more an hour. Like, so
Mhm.
to be somebody who is placed as they're your mentor, they're your therapist, they're your anchor into this world. Like, man, it must really just, like, it's distorted as the individual that they are targeting can get and does get. I'm also thinking about the distortion of the individual who's been given that little grain of power, and like how, like, I can't imagine some of the personalities you came across who had that little inkling of power.
And it's so funny that you mentioned that too, because I was in where I was leading, I was specifically over high school youth,
Mm,
girls, because they separate it by gender,
sure.
and college students. And I had anywhere between like 25 and 75 people just underneath me at all times, who I was responsible for also being their handler, but in a very different way,
Mm,
because they weren't leaders yet. They were being groomed to be leaders.
yeah.
So in that case, my job wasn't to manipulate them or anything like that. Luckily,
Yeah.
I know that I would not have stayed in it if I had been given those responsibilities, but my job was to spy on them.
Wow.
And of course, the way that it was framed to me was, this is for their protection, this is for the protection of the community. And I did some things in that position that I'm not proud of. There was a family that I was very, very close to, and they basically joined to infiltrate, literally, like,
Mm,
yeah, so they essentially joined to infiltrate. And the way that they were doing that was they were trying to kind of host these little meetings at their home, and slowly have people come, and they thought that I was a safe person for that. But what they didn't know was that I was extremely brainwashed and obedient, and I would have done anything that
mm,
the cult told me to do. So I was approached for going to those meetings because they know everything that you do.
right.
Everything that you do is tracked, is monitored. And I was told that I need to report this information back, which is something that I was doing. And it was very conflicting for me. It was not something that I was enjoying doing. I felt love for this family. I felt closeness with them, but I had also been led to believe that they wanted to harm us in some way. And that made me very sad.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I believed I was doing the right thing. I just didn't understand why it had to be done that way. It was a complex situation to be in. And I know that during that time, I was like struggling to eat. I was struggling to
Mm,
sleep. I just felt so much anxiety and nausea about it constantly. And of course, I was getting like a pat on the back from
right.
the cult leader. And that did not make me feel any better. Like, I just felt pretty horrible about the situation. And of course, they knew that it was me after the fact. And after I left, because they had obviously been removed, like they were out after
Yeah.
I had turned them in, essentially. And it was pretty sad because they had moved to North Carolina to do all of that. So they just moved states again. But I had reconnected with them after the fact, and we're all good now.
That's good.
They understood. But
Yeah.
even in my short period of time doing something like that, I just felt so uncomfortable with it. And I really struggled after leaving to understand some of the actions that were done against me
Yeah.
and against people that I love and care about. Without going into detail,
Yeah.
there are people that have permanent brain damage, like cannot function as normal human individuals ever again
Mm.
because of
Trauma.
Sozo and the isolation that they went through,
Wow.
and the gaslighting and manipulation and abuse. There's physical, emotional, sexual, all of this stuff, and they will never be able to live a normal life again. And I think about the people that were so comfortable going along with that stuff,
Yeah.
and that's what I have a very difficult time understanding, because no matter how brainwashed you are, and I feel like I was very, very brainwashed, I had that seed inside of me, that inherent feeling of when something was very wrong.
Mm.
And when I was seeing other people get hurt, it was mind blowing to me that I was bringing it up to so many different people and being completely dismissed. I just couldn't understand how anyone was, how anyone could even excuse it to any degree,
Yeah. Do you think, when I think about to listen to the full episode, search Conrad on your preferred podcast app.